If you have been following my health journey, then you know that I have had a lot of things going on, and one of them is a problem with arrhythmias and tachycardia, which tends to be kind of grouped in the world of dysautonomia, which can be a number of different things. Initially, I was investigated for VVS, or evasive vagal syncope, which we didn't really get any answers there, but it was figured that it probably isn't that, especially since it turned out that I was actually having real seizures, not fainting spells, which we didn't know in the beginning. I had multiple doctors tell me I was fainting when in fact I was seizing. So that was a whole thing to sort out. But in the meantime, over the years, I have continued to have problems with tachycardia where it just goes nuts for a while, and it's quite high, and it just doesn't go down. I'm lying down, I'm chill, I'm not doing anything. I'm just lying there talking with my husband, chatting for hours, and I just lie on the floor and my heart rate just stays up. And so several times we've had to call an ambulance, and they come and they check everything and they put me on a stretcher and bring me out to the hospital because they're not happy with what they see as well with my heart rate. So there's been a lot of that going on, and so we've been trying to get me a tilt table test, which shows whether or not it's POTS, because we definitely noticed when I would stand up that within 10 minutes of that, my heart rate would climb very high, and much more than just 30 beats a minute, which is generally what they kind of go by. So that did suggest that it could be POTS, or POTS related at least. POTS is a difficult thing to diagnose, and it's a difficult thing to even worry about diagnosing because there's no cure for it. So it's just a thing. Then I notice that, especially if I'm in Emerge, which I am often, sadly, I can say I'm being investigated for POTS, and doctors get that now. They know, okay, that is serious. I have to deal with that, and so they do. So the tilt table test is a day trip away from where I live, and that in itself is a huge problem because even though most of it was actually paid for by our taxes because of it being through a specialist and whatnot, at the same time, for me, with my system being the way that it is and with the fatigue that I have, I do not travel because it messes up my nervous system so badly. So I just don't. And family sometimes are not happy with me for that, and that's nothing I can do about that. So I just haven't traveled anywhere really for quite a long time, for years now. But for this test, I had to do it. And the trip itself, well, the first time we did the trip, we got there and it was still a warm day. And it turned out they didn't have air conditioning in this office, which is very weird to me because it's a doctor's office. And normally in warmer weather, there's air conditioning in doctor's offices, but they like it warm in there. So when I got in there, I got way overheated, and which means that my heart rate was up in about the 120s and we could not get it below that. And I was very concerned I might have a seizure because heat is a trigger for seizure. So I had to leave. So it was an entire day trip without getting the test done, which was miserable. Awful, awful, awful. But eventually kind of regrouped and said, okay, we're going to try again. We're going to go on a cooler day and hopefully it will be better. Of course, it turned out that they still like it really hot in that office, so they still kept it really hot. So this time it was just that they had the heat on. So I knew to plan ahead. We had brought ice the first time, but because it was a warm day, the ice had all melted by the time we got there. That did not help. This time we had ice, and I also brought shorts to wear in the office, and I ended up actually having to take my shirt off. Actually, it was the tech's idea that maybe I just wear my bra and my shorts and do whatever I got to do to be as cool as possible. And we had ice. My husband was holding it on my head, and I had it wrapped around my neck, and I was just doing everything I could to be as cool as possible. So I did get through the test okay. I was warm. I was warmer than I like. I was not comfortable, but at the same time, it wasn't as bad as the first time. The first one was just ridiculous. There was no chance. So, however, I wanted to share a little bit about going through this test. If it had been done in my city and I had only had to go 10, 15, 20 minutes to get there, it would have been a very different test. With my system being already hours of travel and everything to get there, and just the intensity of it, even though it was a really nice trip, there was nothing wrong with the trip, nothing bad happened, it was comfortable, it was fine. My husband drove, he was okay, he has his own disability issues. So that worked out fine, and we enjoyed it. I liked being sort of back in my neck of the woods where I used to live years ago, and where he used to live as well. So it was kind of fun to point out things that we remember from when we were there before, and so it was positive. But it doesn't matter. because even positive stress is still stress on the system. So when I got in and got hooked up to the ECG and roped into the table and everything, which I was not scared of either, because I know I've researched enough, and also because of the first trip, I knew what the test looked like, and it's nothing to be scared of. So I wasn't stressed by anything, but my system was completely overworked just being there. So I was tachycardic through the entire test, no matter what we did. And so that kind of messed things up. I think that tainted the test, and I've read reports of other people having that same problem happening, that if you're in bad shape and there's something else going on, then it can wreck the test. And so I didn't get a clear test. There were also other problems with this particular one, and I'm not going to say who they were, but there were so many issues. The tech was a sweetheart. She was super helpful and gave me so much information, and and she was so attentive to everything that was going on. And I could see everything that she was recording, and she was checking every 10 minutes. She had to write down what everything looked like, what my blood pressure was, which was a little on the high side, which is to be expected with a trip like that. But that worried her a little bit. And then also, of course, my heart rate was funky, and I was having moments of SVTs throughout. And so she wrote all of that down. And I remember very clearly seeing what she was listing for my heart rate. And there were a couple of times where my heart rate was quite high. And then the rest of the time I was just barely tachycardic all the way through. So what was interesting was that I got a copy of the report emailed to me later that went to the doctors that are local here. And what was sent through was not what she recorded. The high heart rate stuff that she noted, that I noted too, I could see on the machine how high it was. That was gone. It wasn't on there. It had disappeared from the recording. I don't know why. I don't know who did that. I have a sneaking suspicion, but I won't go any further with that. I also found out that when we were there, we asked if we were going to be seeing the neurologist afterwards. I mean, we'd come all this way, so was that part of the appointment? That's it. It wasn't we have to see him. It was just is that part of it? And can you let us know? And so she said, well, go sit down and wait, and I will go talk to him, and we'll make sure that you can see him. And that was it. And she was like, we don't normally, but I think that would be okay. So I'm guessing she pushed for us to see him just because she felt really bad for me for coming all this way and feeling so sick and going through all of this and seeing what a mess my body was in. And so he did bring us into the office, and he gave me the usual MS testing, which I'm functional, okay? Yes, I was diagnosed, and I've got the MRIs to prove it and whatnot, and nobody's questioned it, but he did, because every test he did, all of the, all the checking your eyes and your strength and everything, all came back fine, and it always has for me. So maybe it's Lyme, as I said in another video. Maybe it is. Okay, that's fine. If that's what we end up with the diagnosis of, then that's totally fine. It's just a name. Either way, MS is just a word. Although it does potentially affect my my disability payments, which would be definitely concerning because we need them very badly. So, and I can't work. I really genuinely can't work. I really am disabled, like truly am, whether it's called MS or something else. And so we'll see how that goes. But anyway, what I was really concerned about was the way that the doctor was nice enough when he talked to me, but he checked everything and asked a few questions about my seizures, but the report itself suggested that he didn't really believe I had MS or that I had epilepsy, which all the other neurologists I've talked to do believe, but he didn't know, and he didn't take the time. And he couldn't, because he didn't have the time, because he had other appointments, which had nothing to do with us. I mean, he could have said, I'm sorry, I've got a lot of patients to see today. I can't see you. We can talk on the phone. And we were already saying multiple times, both me and my husband saying, if it doesn't work, we can go. We'll talk on the phone. No problem. We don't have to stay. But the report that he sent out to the doctors told them that we insisted on seeing him even though he had a full patient load to deal with that day. What? So, and basically because of that, because he didn't believe that I have MS, I don't think, the way he worded it didn't sound like he didn't really believe I have epilepsy, and because the test couldn't definitively show that I have POTS, he basically said, don't worry about it, it's not that either. So then I kind of got the feel that he thinks of me as a hypochondriac who wasted his time. That's the feel I got. Very opposite from the tech, who was very concerned about me. and who really wanted to help as much as she could, which is good. But I don't know how much of this was that he was lying or that she was miscommunicating or what was happening. Either way, the whole thing was just ultimately feels like a giant waste of time. I am glad I got it over with. It's done. Don't plan to ever go back again. If we're going to do that test again, I would want to wait until we have it in our city so that we can do it here if that ever happens, or we'll have to move somewhere else and maybe we'll have one there. Who knows? But in the end, I guess we have to just say, well, who cares? It doesn't matter, because maybe it is POTS, maybe it isn't. Again, it's another word that doesn't have a cause or a cure. So I still have to deal with it. So as I've been mentioning in other videos, I am really hoping that the limbic system retraining will really, really help me get that under control, because it does seem to be helping keep my heart rate much lower. I'm not there yet. I have a lot of retraining still to do. They say it takes a minimum of 6 months to do it. So to get your brain kind of rewired. So I'm really in the very beginning. I'm only about 2 weeks in. Well, not even that. So I have a lot of work to do still, and I have to decide which program I want to follow, if at all. But we'll keep researching and see how we go. And yeah, I wanted to share this because if you have a really crappy POTS test, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. It's not the greatest test. It wasn't scary. It's you basically lie flat, and for 10 minutes they check your heart rate. And ideally, when you're lying flat for 10 minutes, your body's going to rest and settle. And if you're comfortable, which I was not, of course, because of the heat, so that didn't help. And then, of course, all the travel and the stimulation and everything. So, and then you get moved up just like a little bit, and then you wait for 10 more minutes, and then you get moved up a little bit more, and you wait for 10 minutes, and on. It goes like this until you're standing right upright, and they're checking your heart rate all the way along to see. And if you do have POTS, then your heart rate's going to really fly up when you go up. And for some people who do have really severe POTS, they can pass out, and the tech has seen that happen. She's seen people throw up. She's seen that kind of stuff can happen for sure if you're in that place. And I'm not, so yeah, maybe it's not POTS. I absolutely happy to say hopefully it's not, but there is some kind of weird tachycardia thing that is related to my nervous system being messed up, and related to my heat issues, and related to all this other stuff going on. So I am glad to get that out of the way. I'm thankful that they were willing to even do it, that I had a doctor who was willing to send me for it. Once she got those results, I think she's pretty much done with me, but she doesn't have anywhere. She actually said, I don't know, in the end, which, you know what? I mean, that's a frustrating thing to hear from a doctor, but it's a lot better than her pretending she knows when she doesn't, or trying to gaslight you or whatever. So at least she just said she doesn't know. And fair enough, she doesn't know. So we're done with probably seeing her unless we want any more prescriptions, of course, because you know how doctors love to do their prescriptions. So we're just going to leave it at that for now, and we'll see if I ever need to do any more testing along those lines. I am going to keep on watching my heart rate, at least for a while, because it tells me if it goes really high, I might be just about to have a seizure, because that's often the case. But trying to be hopeful and look forward to the future and see what direction we can go in. And I hope eventually I'll get to a point where I just forget completely about checking my heart rate and it's not an issue anymore, and that I'll be just a whole lot better. So that's what I'm praying for. So thank you for listening, and I hope you found this interesting and helpful. Feel free to ask any questions. There's probably lots of details that I left out here, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about having a tilt table test and what it's like living with tachycardia as well. So with that said, God bless.